Welcome to the Mas LaRae Show, where we bring more light everywhere through heart-to-heart conversations. Welcome to the Mas LaRae Show. I am your host, Alysha L, and we're here for a solo episode. The first one I've done in quite a bit of time, but episode 82. This past week, I put out some posts to get questions from the Mas LaRae family from social media, our newsletter, and our website. So I'm just going to go through some of the questions that we've been receiving. We got some good ones in here, some ones that I was looking on. Okay, I'm not even going to really try to prepare because then I'll want to read off what my thoughts are. But the first question we have is, what does Mas LaRae mean? So we'll start off with a light one. Mas LaRae means more light. So Mas meaning Spanish and more, and LaRae is my middle name. And actually it's a middle name that's passed down from my grandmother to my aunt and now to me. So, and supposedly, we'll see, whenever my sister does have a daughter, if she does, she's going to carry that name through as well. So that's what Mas LaRae means. It means more light. And the platform is creating a pure message for our generation. So spreading more light everywhere through heart-to-heart conversations. And that's what we're doing on the podcast. All right. Next question is, as a child, did you ever think about your relationship with God? This is actually from my cousin, Nancy Torres. A shout out to my family. I would say, yeah, I think I know for sure I thought about my relationship with God quite often. I actually had my first encounter, to my knowledge, I believe I was like 5 or 6 years old. And I had an amazing just experience with God. My grandmother had a duplex, side-by-side duplex, and they had a back room. And I remember just like the presence of God just being there and showing up. And I believe that day at 5 or 6 years old, my mom would know the exact year what took place. But that's what I would say was my first encounter. And I think from there, over time, like just growing up in and out of church and there's different experiences in life. I can pinpoint different moments throughout my childhood that I would be intimate with God, that I would have questions with God, that I would pray, that I would write. And throughout my, up until now, being 31, that relationship has just grown over time. And there's certain like just chapters in my childhood that I remember, just really intimate moments with God and learning how to love and be loved by God. And I feel like my mom really was a huge influence in my life as it relates to the relationship with God. She always was adamant on knowing God and praying to God and leaning on God over time. And so it was those early moments as a child that really shaped my belief and my faith. So yeah, that's a good question. As a child, did you ever think about your relationship with God? And I would definitely say yes. And understanding that the relationship with God, no matter if I was in church or out of church, whether I was in a close season with God or not, God was always there. And I, over time, have learned that it's not about religion, but it's about a relationship. So that's a good question. The next question is, did you ever think of doing something different instead of the awesome things that you do now in life? Honestly, I had a dream to play baseball. Like when I was younger, I loved playing sports. I was always outside, running with the boys, getting dirty. I was like the first one out of the house and the first one in the neighborhood, knocking on doors, getting people outside, and then the last one in. And so I always just wanted to play sports when I was younger. I was just really athletic and I just brought a lot of joy to me. But as many people, those dreams don't always come true. So that was one thing I always saw myself doing. And actually, I was just talking about this story recently. I wanted to get in broadcasting. When I went to college for the first 2 years, I picked a college that had a very strong broadcasting program. And then when I arrived, they moved it to the main campus, so I actually couldn't take it. And then when I came back home in 2013 and took a year off, I actually ended up at Ohio Center for Broadcasting, which is now Ohio Media School, I believe. And so I always had this desire, and I thought I would be like more so like sports analyst, and because I was such a big fan of sports, and I enjoyed watching it, and I enjoyed like doing the play-by-play. And so I always thought it would be into sports. So now, like kind of full circle, I always think God just works things out mysteriously. So to be having a podcast and having a multimedia platform, helping share stories, it's a full circle. So I guess, did you ever think of something different? Yeah, definitely sports, broadcasting, but now look, it's all worked itself out over time. So good question. Did you ever rely on coaches or mentors to guide you to the person you are today? And this is from William Holdip. Yes, I definitely relied on coaches. Obviously, being an athlete, I had a scholarship to play softball for my first 2 years in college, and coaches and mentors along the way definitely helped shape the person I am today. And I can just remember specific coaches who, along my journey, was really instrumental in where I was at, whether they would pick me up and take me to practice or get me food after practice and just kind of pour into me and encourage me to just keep going, even though things might have been difficult at home or in our family. I feel like God always put like specific people throughout my life to help pour into me and help nurture me and help guide me. So that was the coaches, and then definitely mentors. So when I got to Cleveland State in 2014, 2015, I met an amazing woman there I actually ended up working with her there on campus, and she became an amazing mentor for me, Dr. Pratt, the late Dr. Pratt. And when I met her for the first time and I sat across from her, she looked me in my eyes and she said, "I see greatness in you." And I'm like, this lady doesn't know anything about me. This is the first time she's seeing me. But it was those words that she had no idea, or maybe she did. But those words like changed the trajectory of my path. Like even being at Cleveland State, and many times I wanted to give up. It was just hard trying to get my degree and balance family and life and jobs. So she was one that poured into me for a specific time frame of my journey that really allowed me to embrace newness. Coming from like the culture community I'm from, newness and change isn't always something that's celebrated or embraced. It's like, oh, you're changing, or you changed up on us, or you're brand new. And so she really told me that really early on in my transitional and transformational journey, that she said, "Alysha, not everyone is going to like the new version of you." And at first I was like offended, because you want to keep those relationships, whether they're family members or childhood friends. But the truth is as you evolve, it forces people around you to evolve. And if they're not willing to evolve, then you have to kind of make those decisions, whether you're going to keep them in your life or you're going to outgrow them. So she was definitely a mentor, and I've had amazing mentors and also business advisors along the way who have just been very influential in my life. But I would be not truly truthful or honest if I didn't include God in that coaching and that mentorship, because as many as great mentors, coaches, and business advisors as I have had over time, I've had to take all that back into my secret place, into my intimacy with God, and really talk through the advice I was receiving and talk through the wisdom that I was getting, to say, okay, you have all these directions you can go, but God, I want you to point me to the direction and the path that you have for me. And I still do this to this day. So definitely I encourage coaching and mentors, but ultimately that relationship with God is critical to making sure that what you're hearing goes through a very small, I see cylinder for some reason, but like this cylinder where you put all of that and it filters out what is necessary for you in that season, in that exact moment, for God to lead you. So All right, this is a question from my mom. I know if I didn't include it, she'll watch this and feel some type of way. But my mom asked me, how did I get so beautiful? And probably because she wants some credit for that. Obviously, your parents have a huge influence on the way that you look. So shout out to my moms for passing down the genes of beauty. But I would say, and I have this tattooed on me, that beauty is what beauty does. So my great-grandmother always said, Alysha, it doesn't matter how beautiful you are on the outside if you're ugly in the inside. And that always stuck with me. And so when she passed, I put that on me because it's a remembrance of, without the lights, camera, the accolades and the awards, when you sit with yourself, how do you feel? And yeah, beauty is what beauty does. So shout out to my mom for that one. Okay. Another question is, this is a good one. This is, what was your aha moment when you decided to dedicate your life and purpose to doing God's work? This is from my good friend, OC May. Shout out OC May and spread the love. So I talk about this some in my book. If you don't know, I have a book, Complete: The True Pathways of True Self-Discovery. I talk about really the journey of running away from my purpose or running away from what I believe God was calling me to do. And I had this moment, and I remember it very vividly, that I was in my father's home, looking in the mirror in the bathroom. And at that moment, I felt like I was looking back at God and having a conversation with God. And that's what I would say was my ultimately surrendering moment, aha moment, to say, I'm done running. I'm done hiding. Like, if you want me, this was my conversation straight up. Like, if you want me, you have me. And that was the moment for me. Like, I was tired of pretending that I was someone that I wasn't, pretending to be something that I wasn't, and forcing myself by design to be something that I really wasn't created to be, or be someone that I wasn't created to be. So in that moment, this is 2014, summer 2014, spring 2014. I talk about this, kind of like how I start off my book, Incomplete, is talking about this very intentional, timely encounter with God. It was just like, bet, I'm done. I've tried everything and it's not working out. So if you want me, if you want my life, then here I am. And then I went on to say, but don't ask me for anything. And so you can fast forward 8.5 years later, and my life has changed drastically from that moment of just saying, my life is yours. So that was, I think, my aha moment. I was just so tired. I literally couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't go on in the day-to-day life, running from my purpose, running from who God called me to be. So that moment was in my dad's house, in the bathroom, sometime in 2014. Good question from OC. Okay, this is a question from my friends over at John Carroll University in their Entrepreneurship Center. This question is, how do you stay motivated? You're always so energetic and ready to go. This is actually a really good question. One, because of what people perceive you to be, right? Social media and doing events and running programs, you have to be on, right? And it requires a discipline in your day-to-day. And for me, it's, I'm an introvert by nature. I like my quiet time. It takes a lot for me to be social. I know probably hard to believe. So when I'm even done with the show, sometimes I'm just like, all right, I'm just going to go home and lay down on the couch for 30 minutes just to bring it down some. So how do I stay motivated? I was thinking about this question because the work and the being requires energy. Light itself requires energy. Light itself is energy. So motivation for me really is my family, my friends, the people around me, the tribe that God is putting in my life. Like, that motivates me to continue to practice what I need to practice in order to be the best and perform at the highest levels. So that motivation comes in different ways. Reading books, listening to people talk and share their creativity. I was just at an open mic night, shout out Poetry Unplugged. I went over there to their event last week, and I was motivated to go home and write a poem. I haven't written a poem in probably 8 months or so. So it's those type of activations that motivate me and inspire me along the way. But I would definitely say my family and the people around me, I feed off of that. I feed off of that energy, being around my cousins and my loved ones to see, they're very proud of me and inspired of what I do. And so to continue moving in that freedom and making them proud is definitely a huge motivational factor for me. And then the fact that it may be hard to view, but I'm not exactly where I want to be. So that always motivates me to keep putting the work in and keep pressing forward to achieving the goals and the vision that, God has put on my heart. So that motivation, I can talk about motivation all day because I get inspired just by coming here on the Breakthrough Sound Studios and recording the show. I'm I pick up on energy. So a lot of things definitely motivate me. All right. Another question. This is from the homie Rico. When's the wedding? Good question, Rico. You tell me. That is to still be determined. Maybe sometime in the near future, but I do not know at this moment. Another question. How would you introduce yourself to the 15-year-old version of you? This is from Juan Silva. I got this question on LinkedIn. So this is a challenging one. How would I introduce myself to the 15-year-old version of me? I think I would start by saying that, God will work everything out for your good. I think about where I was at 15 years old and how much the weight of life and the weight of the world was on me at that time of having to have it all figured out and surviving. I would say that, God has your back and God will continue to guide you and put the people around you that you need in your life. I would also encourage her that, she's beautiful and she's confident and she is love and she is light. Because at that time, there was so much falsehood around me and so much darkness and negativity that if I can talk to her right now, I would just encourage her that everything that she's looking for is within her. And she has dreams within her that the world needs. So that's what I would say to my 15-year-old self. Good question, Juan. All right. What is your most favorite accomplishment? This is from the Molina tribe. My most favorite accomplishment. I talked about this before. I think my most favorite accomplishments is the inspiration and motivation that God shows and inspires through me for other people. I talk about this story. I've talked about this story a couple times, but when I was finishing my bachelor's at Cleveland State, it was probably like the finals week of that final semester. And I was just like, I'm almost there. This is like 2016, December or November 2016. This is also too in my book. But my cousin calls me and she's calling me. It was kind of a random call. I answer and I'm just like, hey, what's up, cuz? Like, what's going on? She's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm studying for these finals that I'm almost done with. She probably felt the stress in my voice. And just context on my cousin. My cousin is someone at that time who was very into what we would say about that life, very out there and in her environment, in her culture and community of survival. It should probably also be the first to say how the environment created her a lot of the times. And so when she called me and she's like, I just want to tell you that you inspired me to enroll in school. And this is someone who always said, like, I'm never going to college. Like, there's nothing there for me. I'm just going to, continue working where she was working at the time. And so when she said that, like, I legit teared up because it wasn't so much about the degree that I was receiving, but the power that the degree had to encourage and inspire people around me, being the first generation college student and the first one in my family to receive a master's degree, that was surprising not only for myself, but a lot of people around me. So to have her call me and say that journey of going through and getting my bachelor's at that time inspired her to enroll to get her associates, to date is still one of my favorite accomplishments, is, just walking in the truth that I had at that time, and knowing that even her and I's relationship wasn't as close because I had to separate myself. A lot of people don't talk about when you're walking in purpose and discovering who you are, it requires you to be alone in some seasons. It requires you to be separated. And so with her and I's relationship and kind of what we went through, and so for her to call and say how it inspired her to, want to dream bigger and want to invest in her future, hands down, one of my favorite ones. And the same can go to, when I get a video from my brother and he sees a recent post of mine, like when I announced the other day about teaching at Baldwin-Wallace University, and he immediately sent me this video of him like just saying, I can't believe that God has brought you this far. And he was just sharing like, I remember you hating school, which was definitely a fact. But now being able to teach and having that opportunity. So just thankful for how God has led me and people being able to be inspired through that type of work. So those are good ones. Those are always some of my favorites for sure. All right, next question. Will there be a part 2 to your book? Oh, this is a good one. This is still the Molina Tribe. I am working on a new book. I don't know necessarily if it'll be a part 2 to complete. If I've talked to you about complete, and I've talked to a few people about it who's read it, it's interesting because even though the book is called Complete, the journey is never complete, right? So it's this play on words that I didn't even know at the time when writing it and then publishing it that God would show me the bigger vision and purpose in that book. And really is like a diary entry to my prayer and conversations with God over time. But the book I'm working on now, I think it is an extension of Complete. And it's really talking about survival and how Complete talks about the 7-year journey of transformation of my own life. And now coming out of survival, coming out of that false identity of survival and poverty and generational trauma and all these things, it's that question of like, okay, who am I now? Because if I'm not any of that stuff, then who have I become and who am I evolving into? And this book I'm working on now, it really shines light on the survival mindset and how it has paralyzed so many of our decisions, whether it's financial or educational or spiritual. It's this journey of changing the mindset from survival to really living the true lifestyle that God has for us. So to answer the question directly, yes, another book's on the way, but not so much part 2, but an extension of Complete for sure. With that being said, we're going to go ahead and take a quick commercial break. Again, you're tuning into the Mas LaRae Show. We'll be right back.
The Mas LaRae podcast is brought to you by Breakthrough Sounds, a recording studio and media company located in Valley View, Ohio. Your creativity creates here. Schedule a tour today at btsoundscle.com.
Welcome back to the Mas LaRae Show. Again, I'm your host, Alysha Ellis, and we are doing questions from our tribe, the Mas LaRae tribe. Questions have come from family, friends, and honestly, some people I don't know. So I'm going to be reaching back out to them to thank them for their questions. But most of the questions came from social media. I posted on all of our platforms to just get people's engagement. And actually, just a shout out to my sister. She's the one who gave me this idea, but then she never sent a question. And I asked her today, I was like, are you going to send a question? She said, no, I know everything about you. I'm like, That was not the best answer that I was looking for, sister. All right. Moving on to our next question. Where do we leave off? Okay. Is there something you wish you could have done differently? That's a good question. I think for me, my immediate answer is like, God is working everything out. So maybe no. But then the other part of me is like, when you go back to certain decisions or maybe chapters in your life, and it's like, oh, maybe I would do something differently. And I think the first thing that comes to mind is my mindset. And for so long, and this goes back to earlier talking about like that aha moment and coming to like face to face with God and confronting where I was at and being honest with myself. Like for so long, I held on to that like false identity, and it was filled with like anger and resentment, pain, a lot of just childhood pain and generational stuff that you don't even know you're carrying. And it creates this false identity. And I was always just so angry, and I had this external protection I had to create for myself. So that's one thing that when I think about some of those experiences and just my decision making and what that led, that behavior or identity, what that led to over time, what I would have done differently, I believe, is accept earlier who I was and who God wanted me to be and God's purpose for my life. Because it would have saved me a lot of time and probably a lot of pain too, of going through those seasons of just being lost, going through those seasons where I was trying to find answers in the wrong places, in the wrong people, in the wrong things, in the wrong substances. So that's probably what I would have done differently, is maybe that aha moment, if I could have that earlier. But like I said, God has worked all of that out. Even if if there are regrets, when I look at what that regret led to over time, I'm like, there's no way I would want to change that, because it led to X, Y, and Z. It led to me going to school, or it led to me being in a relationship or in a friendship that changed my life. And so I don't know. I think that's a tough one, because I believe everything works out for our good. So good question. All right. Okay, these are good questions. All right. What is something that makes you uncomfortable? This is from a good friend, Brent. What is something that makes you uncomfortable, but it can make you better or more visible in purpose, place, or self? Loaded question. This makes me uncomfortable. Now I know why my sister wanted me to do this, because she know I probably want to talk about a lot of this stuff unless you're asked, right? Even creating Mas LaRae has made me uncomfortable, has pushed me out of my comfort zone, has forced me to really lean into God and not have it all figured out or not be in control. So many things make me feel uncomfortable. But I know, to answer that other piece, is I know doing this makes me better. It makes the platform more transparent. Being vulnerable, that's why I wanted to write the book. Vulnerability makes me feel extremely uncomfortable. And more so, it's like, I think for so long, the culture I was in the environment, looks at vulnerability as a weakness, looks at vulnerability as something you should hide from. But vulnerability has changed my life. Being true, being authentic, being genuine has led me to being right here, right now. So I definitely believe 90% of the things that make me uncomfortable make me better. And the second part of that is, if you are doing the uncomfortable thing, how has it changed you? I guess to kind of keep it on Mas LaRae for a minute is, Mas LaRae was something that once I finished my MBA, I wanted to write. I wanted to blog. It was something I've been wanting to do for years, but I didn't have the time between jobs and projects and business and school all at the same time. I had no time to write more concrete aside from like writing in my journal. So producing the Mas LaRae platform and writing and sharing my like intimate thoughts and my relationship with God has been uncomfortable. And I think the uncomfortability that it creates for me is like the unknown of what you share and not having it all figured out or not having the answers. So many people believe so many different things. There's so many religious groups and ethnicities and cultures. So believing in something, even if you don't know everything that it means or you don't have all the answers, is extremely uncomfortable. So for me, with the show and with the platform of Mas LaRae, it has forced me to live in being uncomfortable, if that makes sense. And it also has forced me to be bold with what I believe. If I believe in God and I believe God has given me a purpose and a destiny, and God created the day and the night and the animals and everything living, how do I share that in a way that reaches people and doesn't confide and box us in? And so a lot of times, even when I share on the platform or on our shows or events, it's like sometimes it's not even sharing the words, but it's how you carry yourself, the energy that you hold, the light that you bring, and people are drawn to that. And so even though the platform is all about sharing stories and uplifting voices, a lot of that has been uplifting other people's stories and other people's voices and really penetrating the light and magnifying the light in that and the truth in that. And that has brought just so much joy and love to my life over time. And I also see in that it's like, I don't have to say anything for someone to experience God's love or light through me. And so learning how to be uncomfortable, I had my mentor always said, living in the dissidence. It's really like living in the unknown, living in not having the control or the plan, or knowing the exact thing to say when to say it. So yeah, I see it to be being uncomfortable is good. Being comfortable is something you should question. If you're always comfortable in life or in your day-to-day, like, are you really walking in the truth, in the light that God has, or are you hiding from what's next for you? So being uncomfortable is definitely part of my day-to-day. Preparing today, but going through these questions, I was very uncomfortable, but I'm here. All right, second question from Brent this is a funny one. Small spoon or big spoon, and why? Always big spoon. I don't know why. Like, it reminds me of eating cereal when I was younger. I hated the little spoons because you can't get all the cereal. Like, it's like these little bites. Like, I want all the cereal and the milk in one bite. That's why. It's the more food, the better for me. So, good question. All right, what else we got here? What are some of the most difficult things that you've been through, and how do you get through them? Oh, this is from Jasmine Bailey. What are some of the most difficult things you've been through, and how did you get through them? I feel I've been through so many difficult things. So many of you know that my father passed away last summer. This is like the first thing that jumps to mind is that recent. Everyone can have this commonality when you talk about grief or talk about loss of someone you love. That was an extremely difficult season for me. And I was my father's primary caregiver for 2 years as he transitioned in his final stage of life. And I learned so much during that transitional stage with him. I was humbled. I learned how to serve. I learned how to love unconditionally. And I learned forgiveness, hospitality. I learned so much, but it was so challenging for me to, in all transparency, I'm like, I'm not supposed to be doing this. I'm supposed to be like over here. I'm young. I just finished graduating with my MBA. I have all these things going on. Like, I'm not supposed to be here going through this. Like, and I was angry for a while that was our reality. But I knew that what God put in my heart was, even in entrepreneurship, it created a freedom. I'm the youngest of 7 siblings. And so out of all my siblings, I was the one who had the most freedom in my schedule to take care of him. And God just showed me, like, in that sacrifice, in that obedience, in that challenging season, God was going to honor not only me, but him, and honor the relationship and the family dynamics. And so as challenging as that was, those 2 years and really the last probably 6 to 3 months of his life, it was God. So how do you get through it, right? God, for sure. The people around me, I had friendships and family members who just encouraged me and prayed for me, and agreed with me to just be still and be there and not worry about tomorrow, not worry about the show or the things I was working on, but just to be there with him. So yeah, that was one challenging time. And then after that, this whole past year, summer of last year to this year was been one of those seasons where it's like, okay, so much of my identity became in taking care of him and doing the day-to-day with my dad, that then it's like, okay, well, what do I do now? And where do I go now from this place? And so I went through a season after that of healing and a lot of quietness, a lot of mourning, but it wasn't just mourning his life. I felt like it was the first time in my life that I was in a safe place. And I've talked about this in some of my blogs. One of my good friends, God used one of my good friends to tell me, Alysha, you're safe now. And for so long, I've never felt safe. Survival doesn't allow you to feel safe. And so being in a season where I didn't have to worry about anyone, I didn't have to worry about how I was going to pay my bills or what I was going to eat or where I was going to stay. It was just, I had everything I needed and that time to go through a season of grief and healing. And I would say in that grieving season, it was like a lifetime of grievance. It was I was grieving generationally, because if at 30, if I never was safe, then my mom was never safe and my grandmother was never safe and her mother. Like, I went back 3 or 4 generations of survival. And so I felt like I went through this mourning, grieving process, not just for me, but for all of those generations that never had the opportunity to go through that. So challenging times are always going to be there. And we've been saying this, like, life be lifing. Like, you're going to have those challenges. You're going to have death of loved ones. You're going to fail in business. You're going to have fallout in relationships. But what gets you through is love, light, and ultimately what I see is like creating, having the show, having the platform, having creators as friends, help get me through, and the encouragement, the texts, the calls that I've received and that I continue to receive gets me through those challenging times. I said a lot more than what I thought I would say on that one, but I think everyone can relate to challenging times. So sharing those moments, because social media can make you seem like everyone has it all figured out and everything's all well put together and glamour and glittery, but life is real and we go through real things. And so I've dedicated myself to talk about it along the way, as uncomfortable as it may be, writing the blogs, having the show. It's critical to, have that voice and share those stories, mine and others included. So good question. All right. What's your biggest desire / goal in life? This is also from Jasmine. My biggest desire. I've always wanted to help people. I never knew how to say that or how to be that, but I believe my biggest desire is to see people live the best life that they can, the best quality of life, mentally, physically, spiritually. And that's my own personal desire. So I feel like everything that I'm attached to, everything that I work on, and everyone I'm connected with, in some way or another is manifesting that desire to become true in the work that we're working on and the things that we're doing. So that's a huge desire of mine. Goal. I have so many goals. One immediate goal is finishing this book. I don't really have a timeline, but the goal is to continue writing, like finding the time, creating the time to write, and to write and not be interrupted. We went down to Cincinnati Black Tech Week in July, and we saw Issa Rae speak. And one thing she said was, "Who are you when you're uninterrupted?" And I was like, "Dang, that's a really good question. Like, who am I? What do I want to be? What am I most passionate about when I'm uninterrupted?" So, definitely have a lot of goals. I definitely want to travel more. And take the show to different cities, take the show to different places, and bring that light everywhere through heart-to-heart conversations, right? Plug back on the show, Mas LaRae. And I think I have one more question. Our last question comes from my good friend Heather. If you can summarize it, what is God wanting to help this generation understand in the field of business and commerce? What is God wanting you to help this generation understand through business and commerce? This is a loaded one. I think this goes back to purpose. I feel like one of the gifts that I have is helping people discover their purpose. When I see somebody, I can have a 5-minute conversation with them and just see like goodness in them. Like, I feel like, I see greatness in you. That what my mentor said to me years ago. Like, I feel like I have that gift as well, to see that greatness and to pull that out. Like, the light within me attracts the light in other people, the gifts in other people. So it's discovering your purpose, and then learning how to monetize your purpose. So going back to business and commerce for this generation, it's learning how to cultivate your purpose, nurture your gifts, grow your talents, and allow them to thrive through you, provide for you, sustain you. I think so often, and we've seen this with other generations, like, people are not happy. People are miserable. People are working jobs that they hate, which produces a life that they hate. And so for me, I like to use part of my journey and my story of discovering God working with me, discover my purpose, and now working to monetize it, learning to live from my gifts and through my gifts, and then learning how to sustain it. So that's what I would say that I believe God is allowing me to help this generation through business and commerce, to say, those gifts that you love to write, okay, well, writing could provide for you. Writing can allow your dreams to come true. You love to write music or you love to sing. Well, how do we monetize that? How do we take those drawings that you have? You like to print clothes, or you're a designer. Like, how do we monetize? How do we bring those gifts to the forefront? And that's what I would say. I believe that God is giving me some of those tools, and then connecting with other people to say, all right, how do we create a process to put our purpose through to continue to monetize it? And purpose is, many people have multiple gifts and talents. So that's what I would say to that question. But a lot of good questions. I'm just encouraged. I thank everyone who submitted questions, and maybe we'll make a regular thing out of this, and just creating a safe place to kind of talk through different questions and feedback. But on every episode, if you're a supporter of the show, I love to end with a pure message. A pure message for our generation is what the podcast and the Mas LaRae platform is all about, is creating a pure message for our generation. And so that pure message, usually I ask the guests, but I am the guest today. So the pure message that I have, and it's going to go play on some of these questions that I've dialogued, is, God has a purpose for your life. And I encourage you to connect with the people around you. And if there's no one around you that can feed your purpose or strengthen your purpose or help discover it, then you need to get around new people. Hit up the Mas LaRae platform. We have a tribe of supporters and igniters and lovers who want to pour into other people and want to connect with other people. So the Mas LaRae message I have today is, everyone has a purpose for their life, and we want to help you monetize it. So we have a great tribe of supporters through our connections and our network, and we want to help, invest in you and help share your story and uplift your voice. So that's the pure message, is that, you have a purpose for your life, and God wants to help discover that purpose for you and connect with the people who are going to help nurture it and sustain it, and grow it with you. So again, I'm Alysha L. Ellis. I'm the host here of the Mas LaRae Show, and you've been tuned in, where we bring more light everywhere through heart-to-heart conversations, and we're signing off. Peace.